Hinton respectfully acknowledges that it is located on the First Peoples traditional lands. We recognize this traditional territory to show respect and understanding to those who walk this land since time immemorial. Today, we uphold our ongoing responsibility to work together in the spirit of the intent of the treaties with all the First Peoples and nations that call this place home. The town expresses gratitude for the opportunity to build a better community on these sacred lands for generations to come. With that, we will call this December 11th special council meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Council? Councillor Haas.
I'd like to move that we adopt the agenda as presented, please.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, the motion on the floor is the council adopt the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Seeing nothing, we'll call the question. Councillors, please vote now. And that motion is carried unanimously. Next item on the agenda is new business, item 3.1, 2025 operating budget with 3-year financial plan. CAO Panasic.
Thank you, Mayor. I will turn this over to Ms. Bourbeau.
Good evening, Council. Document before you today is the 2025 operating plan, including financial projections for the following 3 years. 2025 operating budget totals $34,517,538. Administration is recommending adopting this document this evening. The budget as presented supports increased level of service in our parks and sports fields, continues remediation efforts for encampments, and increased enforcement for non-compliant short-term rentals. It includes a 1.5 inflation adjustment for contracted services and consumable supplies and materials, and it absorbs the COLA and merit increases for the wages and salaries. It also supports the inclusion of 2 new positions, one partially funded by a confirmed grant, and the second position to be offset by new revenue generation. The budget also takes steps to reduce the reliance on utility revenue to offset future tax increases and contains the initial first of 5 steps towards ensuring monies are in place for future replacement of the municipality's rolling fleet. As presented, the potential tax increase is 4.32%, but this estimate assumes no growth in assessment as that data is not available at this time. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Bourbeau. Councillor Taylor.
Well, how'd you get 4.32? When I went to your page here and divided the budget for 24 with the budget for 25, I got 4.8. So are those not the numbers to work out the percentage on?
Ms. Bourbeau.
Through to all of council, I did not bring all my calculation sheets with me. That is the number I have in my notes. Should that be different, we will make the correction before any releases go out, and I will ensure that the data is verified. But that is the number that I have from our latest workshop with some of the adjustments that were made.
Thank you, Ms. Bourbeau. Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
But can I follow up?
You can follow up.
But when you take the budget for 2024, you subtract the proposed budget for 2025 by the budget for 2024, you take the difference and you divide that by the budget for 2024, that should be the percentage, right?
Through to all of council, when I refer to the 4.32, I'm referring to the increase to the mill rate in order to generate the required revenues. It's not a percentage on the dollar-to-dollar changes. So our tax rate was for residential, I believe 5.6, so 4.3% increase on that will generate the funds necessary for the 2025 budget. So I'm not referring to change in dollar amounts percentages. I'm referring to the change in the tax rate increase. So a 4.32% increase to the tax rate. The dollar percentages work out completely different.
Thank you, Ms. Bourbeau. Councillor Taylor, follow up.
So that means that the average person's tax rate, everything else being equal, will go up by 4.32%.
That will be the increase on the tax rate from 2024.
And that. And I'm supposed to expect a difference in when I take the net municipal taxation and I subtract it and I divide by it, that gives me a different number?
The dollar differences do come out, calculate differently when comparing dollars to the increase in the percent.
Oh, never seen that before.
Thank you, Ms. Bourbeau. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council. Councillor Taylor.
So, last night we talked about, a, PRC operating budget. An increase in revenue of 138,500 due to selection of recommendation A, which I think we picked. Is that worked into the budget?
Ms. Bourbeau.
Due to all of council, yes, the budget was prepared based on the anticipated increase in fees.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Thank you, Ms. Bourbeau. Councillor Taylor.
The fine revenue is down 60,000. Why is that? From 187 to 116?
Ms. Bourbeau.
Through to all of council, there is a reduction in the fine revenue as we no longer have the automated traffic enforcement contract. And so we have reduced the amount of monies that we anticipate collecting from outstanding fines. We are always conservative in our approach to estimating revenue.
Thank you, Ms. Bourbeau. And thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, once again, there is no motion on the floor currently. Councillor Taylor.
I'd like to see consensus that we reduce the playground and sports field maintenance budget by 80,000. So I've combined these two. And that's $220,000 we're putting into this. And what we're going to get for that is 3 seasonal help, 1 full-time help. And that also buys a $60,000 mower. And that's an awful lot of staff help in my mind. And I'm comfortable going that high with just a general list of items that we're going to work on. Had like an itemized list and the items were costed out, then we'd have a better idea of what we're getting for the money. So that was things like the shale, the fixing the graffiti, the work, the benches out there, the fences, those kind of things. So in lieu of just getting a general list of things that we're going to fix, to go for that, to go from nothing to that much money for something without that itemized list, makes me uncomfortable. I would rather just go for part of the funding, get the lawnmower if we must, and then see what that fixes, and then go from there next year. If we had an itemized list of stuff and we had to cost it out as to what we were going to fix, that might be a different story. Had a better idea how it was going to get spent and what it was going to get spent on. I'd be more comfortable spending that sum of money. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. And Councillor Taylor, can you just repeat the consensus and the motion? Actually, it's not a consensus.
Yeah, playground and sports field budget.
Playground and sports field
So
budget.
there were 2 projects there, and yeah.
Okay.
I'm talking about the combined budget, reducing that.
Okay. Council, the motion on the floor is that council direct administration to reduce the playground and sports field budget by $80,000. Councillor Hawes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've talked to a number of people about this one, and actually they were quite excited to hear that we were going to focus more on our Parks and Rec. This is one of the areas in which we get I believe, a lot of complaints on the condition of our Parks and Rec in areas that are being neglected due to lack of time. And I believe that administration brought forward, enough to know that this money will go towards fixing up with some of those areas and cleaning them up. And the community was the members that I've spoke to were happy to hear that, because that was one thing that they again see every day. However, if council were to consider this, the only way I would ever support this at this point is that if there's a concern as to what those services or extra services will bring us, is that we note this for administration to bring back a bit of more detail digging into it before we just go ahead and cut $80,000 from this year's budget and wait another year for the areas to deteriorate even further. So that would be my preference. So if it stays the way it is, I'm not going to support it at all. I want to see it go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a point of clarification, if I could request Councillor Taylor indicate which line he's referring to in the package that we have?
Councillor Taylor, could you make that clarification?
I'm referring to the original information sheets that we were given. They show up on the package as $35,000 for playground maintenance, $128,000 for sports field maintenance. But remember, there was an additional $60,000 in the packages for lawnmower. So the original combination was $220,000. The amount you see here just has the 60,000 taken out. So this still leaves $140,000 for something to happen.
Councillor Stashik.
Mr. Mayor, that didn't help at all. I would like to know where it is in the package.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which line item on the table, though? Thank you, Councillor Race. Okay, Council, the numbers we're specifically looking for, they are in the Town of Hinton Draft Operating Budget 2025, the spreadsheet that is included in our package. And they're the items at the furthest right column under approved changes from 2024 budget. And Councillor Taylor is specifically speaking to the increased level of service playground and increased level of service sports field maintenance. These are the fifth and fourth items from the bottom of the approved changes from the 2024 budget. A total of 35,180 and 128,125. Councillor Stashik, did you find those items?
I see it now.
Thank you.
Sorry if I may. So this is specifically the sports field budget, not the playground maintenance budget. What it says. So playground and sports field, what's the split?
Councillor Taylor?
I have just combined them together. I haven't split it out as to what's what. Together, there's three summer students, there's one full-time person. That's what I haven't split it out.
Okay. If I may, it's
You may.
splitting hairs. It doesn't matter because I don't support it, but if it's going to move forward, I would need to know what the split is. I want to know where the reductions are going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Councillor Race?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will not be supporting this. I think if we want to see nice playgrounds, we want to see the sports field kept up, we need the people and we need the money to support that. So I won't support this.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Council, the motion on the floor is the council direct administration to reduce the playground and sports field budget by $80,000. Is there any further discussion? Seeing nothing, we'll call the question. Councillors, please vote now. And that motion is defeated 4-1 with Councillor Taylor voting in favor. Council, once again, we are on item 3.1 of our agenda this evening, and there are currently no motions on the floor. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to include the Chamber of Commerce request of a capital expenditure of, I believe it was $34,000 to improve that area, specifically to the DMO area. And if I can speak to it.
Go right ahead.
You know, I think that this was a different ask from the group, and it's to improve a building of ours, a space of ours, that also will improve the view of the DMO for sakes, but also just, you know, I mean, they don't have any office space yet. I've seen the pictures, you know, it's very limited. And we've done a lot over the years to assist in the development of the DMO. It's been, you know, in the works for quite a while, and they've become sustainable themselves. They didn't come to us asking for any operational money this year, the Chamber or DMO. So, you know, I think that this area needs an improvement. It is our building. And quite frankly, I think if we don't do this, then there's other avenues that group will go that will still come to us at some point. So I think it's a reasonable request to improve that area. So I'd like to seek, you know, council's approval to add this to the 2025 budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, the motion on the floor is the council direct administration to include the Chamber of Commerce capital request of $34,000. Any discussion? Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I don't support that. For residents and businesses intending to seek to promote commercial tourism or any other useful activities, a fine thing. This initiative is going to receive consistent daily funding coming from hotels with DMF charges for the most part. The success indicators that we heard about on October 22nd are tied to hotel vacancy rates and average daily revenues. That's what we heard on October 22nd. So it's not something I could support at this time. Even in towns where these type of initiatives have incurred, the bulk of the funding comes from one type of business. Hotels and other tourism businesses are private businesses. They're not public services, which is why I suggested in the past that it shouldn't come. My hope is that as this funding matures, the success indicators will be broadened out past those explained on October 25th. So the initiative could be broader than it looks. And I think if that happens, then those type of charges might be tolerated better by the public on their hotel bills or other tourism bills when they show up. And I think that while council has certainly given seed money to this project, it was expected from council in the past that after we gave that seed money, that this project should stand on its own financially after that and not come back to us for sustainable levels of funding. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know during budget deliberations, we already kind of touched on the relationship between the Chamber of Commerce and the DMO. But if administration could remind me how that relationship works, actually, does the DMO pay rent to the chamber for office space, or how does that work in that space?
CEO Panasic.
Through the mayor to members of council. So as of right now, I don't believe the DMO's in there, but I could be wrong. But the intent is that with this request that the DMO would, because we're on the last year of a lease agreement with the Chamber of Commerce, that they would just sublease that space, and they would take on all of the tourism information services, the service that we used to pay the $34,000 to operate. The DMO would take on that service and use the 34,000 for some upgrades to the building to make some office space work with them. With the idea or the conversations being had is that once the chamber's lease is due next year, that we would actually sign 2 separate lease agreements with those groups.
I could follow up.
Go ahead.
So understanding that a little bit better, it's actually the chamber that's making the request for the $34,000, and it's to do capital upgrades to a town-owned building so that they can sublease it to a different party. This is not the DMO coming and asking for operating funds. They, my understanding, are self-sufficient in terms of operations now. I don't know that throwing up a roadblock to prevent or to limit their ability to be able to have workable office spaces is really a message that we want to send to this brand new group about how we feel their importance stands in the community. I know previously I may not have supported this, but I think I've come around to understanding a little bit better what the need is and the fact that it's not going to be an ongoing need. So I will support the motion that's before us right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ostashik. Councillor Race.
Thank you, sir. To administration, because it is our building, have they come to us and they're going to consult with us on the design of what they want to do, make it accessible?
CEO Panasic.
Through the mayor, we haven't gotten that far into who would be doing the project, but most likely it would be the town. But, you know, with the end goal of the whole purpose of the project is to make it work for that group. So they would be the ones kind of driving what they would need to change in order to make it a workable office space.
May I continue?
Go right ahead.
So it's not the DMO coming and asking for this money. It is the Chamber of Commerce coming and asking for it to accommodate the DMO within that building. Is that correct?
CEO Panasic.
Yeah, that's correct. So this 34,000, it's not new funding because we've paid that 34,000 yearly to the chamber to operate the visitor information. What the DMO is saying is that they will do that for no operating funding, but they still want the $34,000 so they can actually make that space work for them, so they can actually have an office there. And their plan is that I believe their one full-time staff will be there, and then if they want to hire some summer staff for the summer season, they will. So it is the DMO requesting, but it's kind of in a transitionary period.
So that's my big question. If the DMO is going to be taking care of downstairs and they need additional staff, they're not coming back to us looking for money to pay for that additional staff. That's on them, eh?
CEO Panasic.
Through the chair, the only request we've received from that group is 34,000 to be put into the capital upgrades for the building, not operation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I appreciate the clarification from other councilors, their questions, because, yeah, I mean, it's intended for the space to be DMO, but ultimately is the Chamber of Commerce coming to us as our community partner to then, and instead, instead of it being operational, they looked at it as a unique way. Instead of, asking for two, both operational and capital, we're just going to ask for capital. So, we've had a longstanding relationship with the chamber as well. We worked well together with them, and I too don't want to put up any barriers to, this group. Now, this group also has proved that they are sustainable. They've achieved grants. They're continuing their work. They didn't come to us for any more money. This is the chamber to improve that area. So I think that it's a reasonable ask, and nothing has been done to that building for quite some time. The chamber has not come to us for any capital improvements over the years. Since my time on council, it's always been operational. So I think it's time that we might invest a little bit into that building to make that space accessible for accommodating the DMO. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, the motion on the floor is that council direct administration to include the Chamber of Commerce capital request of $34,000. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, clearly the request for $34,000 came during the DMO portion of the presentation. It was during their portion of the presentation. And my preference is that we would deal with this like any other sort of business arrangement. If somebody wants to come and do leasehold improvements to something, that is handled, and that's then considered in the lease that you follow up. Especially considering what this initiative is about and where the money is coming from. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, the motion on the floor is the council direct administration to include the Chamber of Commerce capital request of $34,000. Any further discussion? Seeing nothing, we'll call the question. Councillors, please vote now. Councillor Taylor voting against by hand. And that motion is carried 4-1 with Councillor Taylor voting against. Council, we are still on item 3.1 of our agenda this evening. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'm at the point where I'd like to move the council adopt the 2025 operating budget and the 3-year financial plan as presented. If I can quickly speak to it.
Go right ahead.
Administration brought us, first of all, I think a very effective schedule for going over the budget, both capital and operating, presented everything in great detail to understand the purpose of it. Council has gone through many times, looking at it and back and forth on a few things, and, coming to, I don't imagine, Ms. Barbeau, that $34,000 will have much impact on the already 4.32%, probably be 4.4, something like that, I'm guessing, with the addition this evening. So I think, looking around too at other municipalities that have passed their budgets, and I realize it's, apples and oranges and, staplers and pens, but comparisons, but they seem to be that range of 4 to 6, some are higher, but I think that's a reasonable increase, especially due to, the expenditures that we have and the inflation. So I'm prepared to adopt this agenda or this budget for this year at this time. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. And I believe that's going to be as amended.
Oh, as amended, sorry.
Is that correct, CEO Panasic?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Council, the motion on the floor is that council adopt the 2025 operating budget and 3-year financial plan as amended, and that'll be changed. We'll go to discussion. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I will support this, coming in at a 4.32 property tax or mill rate is good. But I do have a question for administration. So in February, March, when we get our budget surplus, can you just refresh my memory on how that plays into this?
Ms. Barbeau?
Through to all of council. So as we move through audit and we close off all of the invoices that have come in and match the revenue and expenses for the 2024 year, we will come to a surplus or a deficit, operating surplus or deficit for the year. And at that time, we are legally bound to put that money into reserve. So we'll see the transfers going into reserves, and that will be part of the audit presentation. Often the timing makes it so it's difficult to come to council with a separate report ahead of audit, but we can certainly try to do that. With the audit being prepared by an external party, we have a commitment of time, but it's possibly the meeting dates won't align up with when we have the information, but we can certainly look to bring you the detailed information on that, and then any of that could be used as part of a tax stabilization initiative if that was council's choosing.
Just one quick,
Go right ahead.
so is it a specific reserve or do you take a look at several reserves?
Generally for the surplus coming from the operating, we would always look at what it the department that had the surplus or the under. So if it was utilities, then we would put into the utility reserve. If it was a little bit from everything, it would go into the general
Oh, okay,
municipal reserve.
okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Borbo. Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Taylor.
How's the new growth going to affect this? Like you said, we haven't calculated in the new growth yet. There being a number of buildings that are getting built or were built and completed, including houses. So when will we know about that, and how is that going to affect this?
Ms. Borbo.
So new growth and changes in the assessed values will be presented to us mid to late March. It has to go through audit by the province, and that deadline is February 28th. Generally, it's a very quick turnaround. So new growth or changes to assessment will give us an opportunity to potentially lower the tax rate that was anticipated, but keeping in mind that if someone's property value assessment has increased, they will pay more even if the tax rate remained the same because their property is worth more. But new growth within the town will level out and potentially reduce the overall tax rate that we're forced to, because we don't generate more than, that's the importance of approving the budget. We have to have a budget adopted before we can set the tax rate, and our taxes can only fund the operating budget. We cannot go over that.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Borbo. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, the motion on the floor is that council adopt the 2025 operating budget and 3-year financial plan as amended. Is there any further discussion? Seeing nothing, we'll call the question. Councillors, please vote now. And that motion is carried unanimously. Council, is there anything further for item 3.1 on the agenda this evening? Seeing nothing, we'll move to item 3.2, 2025 to 2030 capital plan. CAO Panasic.
Thank you, Mayor. I will turn this over to Ms. Borbo as well.
Ms. Borbo.
Thank you. Council, before you, you have the 2025 to 2030 capital plan. Full dollar value of this plan is $41,735. Sorry, $41,735,533. It is funded through grants as well as from existing reserves. And the anticipation in 2025 will be funding for projects totaling just over $16 million. And while a large share of that is going towards the water and sewer, administration feels that they did bring forward a budget capital plan that will also identify and create some opportunities for upgrading within our recreation services, some of our parks and playgrounds, as well as our fleet. And with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Borbo. Council? Councillor Taylor.
The expenditure for the AFRRC radios, that's been on the books since 2023. Nothing's been spent. So that's still an urgent and important project.
Ms. Borbo.
through to all of council. So at the time that was left on the, or approved on the capital budget, there was go ahead to spend up to 41,000. And the balance had to be secured through grants before it could move forward for full expenditure. I'm not going to say it's not important, and I encourage it staying on the document for this year as well. We did run into some difficulties during the wildfire experience in 2024 because our emergency personnel are not able to readily communicate with our CMP and other members because they do not carry the same type of radio. So I believe it is still an ongoing initiative that Protective Services will be looking at in 2025, but we are sourcing actively grants to try and complete that project.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Bourbeau. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Taylor.
In 2024, we had 48 capital projects and we completed 20, looks like from start to finish, according to this information. That's a 40% completion rate. That means 28 will be carried over and we got 33 new projects for about 61 new projects in 2025. Are we going to improve that completion rate in 2025 of 40%?
CEO Panasic or Ms. Bourbeau? Ms. Bourbeau.
I'll take the first part of that if council doesn't mind, and I'm sure CEO Panasic will have something to add. So the completion rate for 2024 does look low. I want to caution everyone that these numbers for 2024 were generated almost at the end of Q3. So we were still waiting a lot of invoicing, and we ran into difficulties last year during budget season trying to keep updating these documents and keep them live and always having the numbers on the historical, and it created some errors for us that caused us to stumble during presentation. So we kept the 2024 document very static during this process. But it is my understanding from just looking at the initial counting records that there will not be that many carry forwards. We have in some of the instances where they're marked as not complete at this point in time, it's simply waiting invoicing.
Thank you, Ms. Bourbeau. CEO Panasic.
Through the mayor and members of council, the other thing to keep in mind is typically, especially on larger projects, one of the things that we try to do is that we do the planning. In year one, we'll get to detailed design and we'll give ourselves a little bit, usually about a year runway. And then the completion and the execution happening in the next year. So although we're starting the project, it's by design that we take that year between design sometimes and execution, but that's just a more general comment.
Thank you, CEO Panasic. Councillor Taylor, follow up.
Oh, that's fine.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, we are on item 3.2 of our agenda this evening, and there are no motions on the floor. Councillor Haas.
Okay, I'd like to, second here while I pull it up. I'd like to move the council adopt the 2025 to 2030 capital plan as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, just briefly. I mean, again, this is not an easy task for administration because there's a lot of projects to bring forward, obviously, but they, vetted through their system what is the most priority ones. We've gone through it ourselves, made some adjustments, and, I think this is a reasonable amount of improvement in our community, some big projects, some other improvements, that have been, I think, on the list too for quite a while now too. So I think this is reasonable. We definitely, though, moving forward, I think having that conversation about reserves is very important because, as our CEO said, we could be in better shape when it comes to our reserves. I do also look forward, we in the future in 2025 having the conversation, about the rec center and the future of that as well and how that might impact the capital projects and capital plan in the future. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, the motion on the floor is that Council adopt the 2025 to 2030 capital plan as presented. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I meant to ask that. What's the reserves at the end of 2025 going to be?
Ms. Bourbeau?
I didn't see it in the documents I was given.
My apologies, council. I did not bring my worksheets. I believe we were at 21 million, but I would want to follow up and provide that more conclusively at another time.
No,
Sorry, he asked for reserves after this budget. Should we approve this? I believe 21 million is the current number. The post-budget number would be,
My apologies. I am not recalling from those documents and I did not bring my last council package. Possibly CO Panasic brought last council package.
Through the mayor members of council, I did not, but my recollection is that we were around 14 million projected by the December 31st, 2025.
My apologies. I'd said 18. Oh,
Yeah.
Councillor Taylor, does that satisfy your request, or would you like us to take a recess so the administration could get a better number?
it's an important number. I mean, I'm going to vote for this anyways, but I'd like to vote for that knowing an important number like the reserves. I think everybody else would like that too.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. I actually tend to agree. If administration could find us that number, we're going to take a 7-minute recess. And if you're not back with it, we'll extend. Thank you. And we will call our special council meeting for December 11th, 2024 back to order at 4:47 PM. Council, we are on item 3.2 on the agenda, and there is a motion on the floor. That motion is that council adopt the 2025 to 2030 capital plan as presented. We were addressing a question from Councillor Taylor, and I believe administration has those numbers. So Ms. Bourbeau.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to go and grab the correct data. So I stand corrected. The forecast balance for December 31st, 2025 is $14,306,466.
Thank you, Ms. Bourbeau. Councillor Taylor, would you like to follow up? Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, the motion on the floor is that council adopt the 2025 to 2030 capital plan as presented. To our secretary, you're gonna have to push those out for votes again. There's a erroneous question up on our page at the moment for some reason. Council, is there any further discussion for the motion on the floor? It's Secretary, it's coming up for us with a short break was called at 4:42 PM and the meeting resumed at 4:47 PM. You might need to clear this and or maybe remove those notes actually from it. I don't know. There we go. Okay, council, the motion on the floor is the council adopt the 2025 to 2030 capital plan as presented. Any further discussion? Seeing nothing, we'll call the question. Councilors, please vote now. Councillor Taylor voting in favor by hand, and that motion is carried unanimously. Council, is there anything further for item 3.2 on the agenda this evening? Seeing nothing, we'll move to item 4.1. Council? Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Council, the motion on the floor is that council adjourn the meeting at 4:50 PM. Councilors, please vote now. 4:49 PM, actually. Councillor Taylor voting in favor by hand. And Councillor Ostashik voting in favor by hand. That motion is carried. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.